Drive Time on RTE Radio1 with National Irish Bank. The bank that brought Danske Bank's international expertise to Ireland is now bringing the Danske Bank name.
Next Monday and Tuesday, the Group of Eight, or the G8, will gather in Fermanagh for their annual summit. The Assembly of International Leaders from the world's leading industrialised nations will also be joined by representatives of the European Union, including Taoiseach Enda Kenny. Such gatherings have become synonymous with protesters, some violent. Yesterday, in advance of the G8, riot police were deployed in central London to deal with demonstrations. So what's on the agenda and why does the G8 cause such upset? I'm going to speak shortly to James Kelsey-Fry, a contributing editor with New Internationalist and an Occupy supporter. But first, let's go to our Northern editor, Tommy Gorman. Tommy, the host of this year's summit is British Prime Minister David Cameron. It was a bit of a surprise, wasn't it, when he decided Fermanagh was going to be the location?
It ticked a number of important boxes, Mary. First of all, it's out of the way. The northwestern corner of the island of Ireland. The last time the UK hosted the G8, it was in Gleneagles, and you had up to 100,000 protesters making their way to Edinburgh, which was the nearest major urban centre. So the world is, I suppose, a more unhappy place since 2005. So many serious issues out there about money, about power, about conflict. So having it in Northern Ireland probably suits the organisers. Secondly, it's a beautiful place. It's easy, relatively easy to secure, and it gives the Westminster administration an opportunity to say this is how much we think of Northern Ireland. So it's a nice gesture.
We'll have Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Russia and the UK, as you say, Tommy. It's primarily an economic forum, but David Cameron has his own agenda, but will it all be overshadowed by Syria?
Well, I think Syria is certainly going to be part of the agenda, as is Turkey. I don't think any self-respecting group of world leaders could meet and not discuss those contentious issues. And remember, as well as having, say, the likes of the Germans and the Americans and the British at this, you will have Putin, the leader, Vladimir Putin, the Russian leader, and there will be, I'm sure, varying opinions and disagreements in relation to issues like Syria. As well as that, Mary, very significantly for Ireland perhaps, the question of taxation and tax shelters is likely to arise as well. Enda Kenny in some respects is lucky because he's not really a major player. We're like first cousins once removed, or we're like the guests who were invited to the afters of the wedding, because the European Union will be represented by the President of the Commission and the President of the Council, and it just so happens that Ireland is in the tail end of its 6-month presidency.
All right, will you stay with us, Tommy, because
Surely,
I want
Mary.
to talk to Jamie Kelsey-Fry. Jamie, I know you're not coming to Northern Ireland next week. As Tommy Gorman said, the last time the UK hosted the G8 in Gleneagles, there was 100,000 objectors. Do you think many will try to make it to Northern Ireland next week to voice their objections to the G8 gathering?
Yes, I hope there will be. I was at the Gleneagles in 2005. There definitely weren't 100,000 protesters there who were actually against the G8 itself. That there was a large amount of people who came for the Make Poverty History, which was a sort of PR campaign, a lot of people believe. But in terms of the activists who were trying to stop the G8 itself, that it was way lower than 100,000. I think it's interesting to use the phrase that one of the reasons that location has been chosen is that it's easy to secure. And I think it's important that we should ask ourselves, why are these kind of meetings so conscious of security? In other words, what do they represent to so many people that makes so many people angry against them?
I suppose one response to you would be that the world leaders are gathered and they want to get down to business, and they can't get down to business if they're being disrupted by protesters.
It would be, well, obviously these are significant world leaders, so there's your normal security measures, but as your listeners saw yesterday in London, there's a huge amount of people who weren't targeting the leaders at all. They were just targeting the institution, which they think is completely illegitimate, the G8 institution itself. There's a much wider narrative that's going on here, which is to do with a movement that's been going on for 2 years really now, which is global due to the internet. And it's young people generally from all walks of life who are challenging the economic system itself. They're challenging the legitimacy of the political system and the economic system itself. And that's growing enormously. It's interesting that you refer to Syria and Turkey as being on, something that will probably be on the agenda. But there are strong parallels with all these conflicts that are happening globally at the moment, whereby it's people who are actually uprising because they believe that the economic system itself is deeply at fault. It's unjust, undemocratic, unsustainable, and broken. And so you've got a very interesting development that's happening in human culture at the moment, in my belief.
And if you can perhaps help us with the argument among the protesters, is it that they want to protest the G8 but they don't want to get involved to try and affect change from within the process?
Okay, that's the key question. Yes, absolutely. In my experience, I'm not speaking on behalf of the anti-G8 movement in any way whatsoever. Yeah. In my experience, and I am very involved in the various activist movements, there is a complete distrust in the political systems themselves. So, for this situation in the UK, for example, all the people that I'm very close to in terms of working in the activist world, there's no one to vote for who will make the changes that we believe are necessary for this world to go forward, where it addresses inequality. We believe that the G8, for example, is actually just going to keep business as usual, which is profits before people. We believe very strongly that governments have an ear to corporations and not to the people they're meant to be representing.
Tommy, can I finish with you on the whole question of policing and what policing will be like in Northern Ireland next week? Do you expect a heavy-handed approach, or will they try and keep everything calm and low-key?
I think they'll have to use the precautionary principle, Mary. I think you'll have up to 8,000 police officers, half of them drafted in from the likes of England and Wales. And remember, as well as the threat of people attempting to get through the 5 kilometres of fencing that has been put up around the Lough Erne resort, there's also the additional possibility that dissidents may see this as their opportunity with the world's media gathered to stage some of their kind of activities. So I think that the 8,000 police officers will be very, very present and that will continue until the leaders have left. And you've heard the kind of sentiments that were expressed there. Most of, if not all of these leaders subscribe to the capitalist system, and they're coming here to discuss the problems within that capitalist system, and there will be a lot of people opposed to what's going on in the world. So for that reason, I think the security presence is inevitable.
And will there be an army presence?
There will be a backup presence, Mary, but I'm, say, for instance, thinking of the situation where you're going to have police officers from Staffordshire trying to patrol roads in County Fermanagh. What's interesting about Enniskillen itself is it's an island town. But Mary, if you just even take into consideration the logistics, the press centre, the Killyhevlin Press Centre, has places for 500 people max. The Russians would fill that. The Japanese would fill that. The Americans would fill that. So a lot of people won't get in there. So that is actually 7 long miles away from the Lough Erne resort. Enniskillen itself is 6 miles away from it, and the nearest, if the police have their way, the nearest protesters will get to the Lough Erne resort is the barrier that's up, I'd say, 5 miles from the hotel doors.
All right, Tommy Gorman in Belfast, thank you, and Jamie Kelsey-Fry, thank you for joining us as well this evening.